Hello everyone. I guess we have all heard of the term neocolonialism, especially for those of us that live in Africa. In this video, I will show you proof that Africa is still under colonialism, which will in this video will refer to as neocolonialism. You must be asking yourself, what is neocolonialism? For this video, I will define it as the economic and political control of a country by another country or a group of countries in a subtle and indirect way. Although Africa gained independence from colonialism in the mid-20th century, neocolonialism still exists and has significant implications for the continent. To mention just a few, we have Mali, the Mali situation, DRC situation, the arising situations in Somalia, Ethiopia. All these are some of the examples of neocolonialism in our continent. First, we have to look at the historical context of this issue. To understand neocolonialism in Africa, it is essential to know the historical context. In this case, after gaining independence, many African countries became heavily indebted to Western countries and international financial institutions. For instance, the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund have huge debts owed to African countries. These institutions have imposed structural adjustment programs that required African countries to cut social spending and privatize public services like water and electricity. Consequently, poverty, inequality, and unemployment increased, while basic social services like health declined. Away from the historical context, let us move to resource extraction, whereby, as you all know, Africa is rich in natural resources like oil, minerals, and timber. However, Western countries and multinational corporations have exploited these resources without adequately compensating African countries. The terms of trade are unequal, and African countries often get a small share of the profits. Resource extraction also harms the environment and leads to social conflicts. For this case, Congo is your perfect example, where you don't have to be an intellectual genius to understand the problem. Belgium, the US, the UK, and all the major global powers are in the country, and recently China and Russia are partaking in the resource extraction problem of Congo. Our third issue to prove that neocolonialism exists is the military intervention. For this part, Western countries have used military intervention to maintain their interests in Africa. For instance, France and us continuously intervened militarily in several African countries, including Mali and the Ivory Coast, to protect its economical and political interests. On the other hand, the US also has significant military presence in Africa with a network of military bases and operations. For instance, the US has military bases in Djibouti and Kenya, which serve to advance their neocolonialism and international interests. For the issue is the foreign aid. For this part, Africa has always been the target for major international organizations purporting to provide foreign aid. However, foreign aid often reinforces neocolonialism. Western countries tie aid to conditions that benefit their own interests. For example, opening up African markets to their corporations for adopting neoliberal economic policies. Aid also creates dependency and undermines African agency. Having gone through those 4 points, I also want to show some few statistics that prove that Africa is still under colonialism. First, on structural adjustment programs. Between 1980 and 2000, Sub-Sahara Africa's debt rose between 62 billion to 210 billion US dollars as per the World Bank. Secondly, the structural adjustment programs reduced public spending on health and education by 25 to 50% in many African countries between this period as per the UN Development Program. On the second point of resource extraction, in 2018, African countries received only the 2% of the total value of their exported goods. This is compared to the 67% received by the developing countries for their exported goods as per the UNCTD. Secondly, African countries lose an estimated $50 billion annually to illicit financial flows, often through the exploitation of natural resources. In most cases, these losses are financed and coordinated by major global players like China, the US, and others. In terms of military intervention, France has maintained military bases in Africa since the colonial period and currently has over 6,000 troops stationed in the region as per the BBC. Secondly, the US has increased its military presence in Africa significantly since the 9/11 instance, with over 7,000 troops and 29 military bases across the continent. Finally, in terms of foreign aid, in 2019, foreign aid to Africa amounted to over $51.2 billion, with the US, UK, and France being the largest donors. This is as per the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. A study of 30 African countries that found that aid dependence can reduce economic growth by over 2.3% annually. This is as per the statistics provided by the Journal of African Economies. I hope with all these statistics, you can see that Africa is still under colonial powers and that much more than politics and military has to be done to liberate Africa. Thank you.